It was a moment that would change lives forever. When the entitled teenager mocked the exhausted waitress at the downtown diner, she had no idea who was watching from the corner booth. The kind of moment that reminds us how quickly fortune's wheel can turn, how swiftly the mighty can fall, and how unexpectedly heroes emerge from the shadows. Comment where you're watching from today, because this story might just change the way you look at the world around you. In the bustling heart of Los Angeles, where dreams are made and broken daily, sometimes the most profound lessons come from the most unexpected encounters. For 17-year-old Brianna Westfield, life had always been a carefully curated series of privileges: designer clothes, luxury vacations, and the unwavering belief that the world existed to serve her desires. But on a rainy Tuesday night at Mel's downtown diner, that belief was about to be shattered in the most public way possible. They say true character reveals itself when no one important is watching. But what happens when someone is watching? What happens when that someone turns out to be one of Hollywood's most beloved and respected figures? The diner was nearly empty that night, save for a few late-night regulars hunched over coffee cups and the remnants of apple pie. The neon sign outside flickered against the rain-streaked windows, casting an ethereal blue glow across the worn linoleum floors. It was the kind of place most people from Brianna's world would never set foot in. Too ordinary, too real, too far removed from the carefully filtered reality she inhabited. But that night, two worlds were about to collide in a moment that would spread across social media like wildfire and remind us all of a simple truth. Kindness matters, and sometimes justice wears unexpected faces. For Maria Rodriguez, the single mother working a double shift at Mel's, it was just another Tuesday, another night of sore feet and tired smiles, another collection of hours stolen from time with her young son, another step toward the nursing degree she pursued during the precious few hours she wasn't serving others. Her uniform was spotless despite the long hours, her smile genuine despite the exhaustion that clung to her like a shadow. What Maria couldn't know was that this ordinary shift would become extraordinary, that her quiet dignity in the face of cruelty would catch the attention of a man whose fame was matched only by his legendary kindness, a man who'd spent decades in the spotlight without letting it corrupt his soul, a man who understood that true worth isn't measured in dollars or followers, but in how you treat those who can do nothing for you. The lessons learned that night would echo far beyond the walls of Mel's diner. They would remind us that sometimes the universe has a way of balancing its scales in the most surprising ways. That respect isn't earned through Instagram followers or trust funds, but through the content of one's character. And most importantly, that we never truly know who's watching when we reveal who we really are. Some say that fame changes people, that power corrupts, that wealth isolates. But for one Hollywood icon, these forces had only deepened his connection to humanity, only strengthened his commitment to treating everyone with dignity. While he could have retreated into the privileged bubble that wealth and fame afforded him, he chose instead to remain grounded in the real world, to eat at diners instead of exclusive restaurants, to ride the subway instead of being chauffeured, to see people instead of status. The rain continued to fall outside Mel's diner that night, washing the streets clean, while inside, a moment of reckoning approached, a moment that would strip away pretense and reveal the truth that lies beneath our carefully constructed facades, a moment where kindness would confront cruelty, where humility would face arrogance, where justice would be served alongside the night's special. As the hands of the clock moved toward midnight, no one in that diner could have predicted how this encounter would unfold, least of all Brianna Westfield, who was about to learn that sometimes the people we dismiss as unimportant are the ones most worthy of our respect, and that sometimes the quiet person in the corner booth might just be Keanu Reeves. The stage was set for a collision of worlds, for a lesson that would be remembered long after the rain stopped and the neon lights dimmed. A lesson about the power of kindness, the importance of respect, and the unexpected ways the universe sometimes steps in to balance the scales of justice. What happened next would be captured on a dozen cell phones, would trend on social media platforms worldwide, would be discussed on talk shows and in classrooms. But beyond the viral moment, beyond the headlines and the shares and the likes, lies a deeper truth about who we choose to be when we think no one is watching, and what can happen when someone unexpected is. For in that diner, on that rainy Tuesday night, the universe was about to deliver a masterclass in karma, and Keanu Reeves was about to remind us all why he's not just a beloved actor, but a beacon of what humanity can be at its finest. As Brianna pushed open the door to the diner, her friends trailing behind her like perfectly styled satellites, the bell above the door announced their arrival with a cheerful jingle that belied the storm that was about to break. Maria, already hours into her double shift, looked up with a tired but genuine smile, unaware that this group of teenagers was about to test her patience, her professionalism, and ultimately her faith in humanity. What unfolded next would serve as a reminder that sometimes the most powerful lessons aren't taught in classrooms, but in the small moments of everyday life. That sometimes our true teachers don't stand at podiums, but sit quietly in corner booths, observing the world with compassionate eyes. And that sometimes the most memorable schooling comes not from those appointed to instruct us, but from those who lead by quiet example. The rain continued to fall, washing away the day's grime from the streets of Los Angeles, while inside Mel's diner, the stage was set for a moment of reckoning, a moment that would remind us all that in a world where you can be anything, the most important choice is to be kind. Mel's downtown diner stood as a defiant relic of 1950s Americana, sandwiched between a trendy new coffee shop and a boutique fitness studio on Wilshire Boulevard. The chrome-trimmed building, with its faded red booths and checkerboard floor, had survived 6 decades of Los Angeles transformations, from urban renewal to economic downturns to the relentless march of gentrification. While the city around it had been constantly reinvented, Mel's remained steadfastly authentic, a place where the coffee was always hot, the pie was always homemade, and everyone was treated the same, regardless of what they drove or wore. The rain that had been threatening all day had finally unleashed itself, transforming the neon signs outside into watercolor blurs against the night sky. Inside, the diner was bathed in the warm glow of vintage lighting fixtures, creating pools of amber that softened the edges of the worn Formica tables and illuminated the faces of the scattered late-night patrons. In the furthest corner booth sat a man whose presence seemed simultaneously ordinary and extraordinary. Dressed in simple dark jeans and a well-worn black jacket, his long hair tucked behind his ears, he sat quietly reading a paperback, occasionally pausing to sip from a mug of black coffee. There was nothing about his demeanor that demanded attention. In fact, quite the opposite. He seemed to consciously occupy as little space as possible, as if practiced in the art of being present without being intrusive. Yet there was something undeniably magnetic about him, something in the quiet dignity with which he turned each page, something in the gentle way he thanked Maria each time she refilled his coffee. Those who recognized him, and surprisingly few did, in this setting so removed from red carpets and movie premieres, respected the unspoken boundary he had created around himself, a small island of normalcy in a life that was anything but. Keanu Reeves had been coming to Mel's for years, drawn to its unpretentious atmosphere and the staff who treated him like any other customer. Here, he could simply be a man enjoying a late dinner, rather than a Hollywood icon whose every move was scrutinized and documented. The staff at Mel's had an unwritten rule. They never mentioned his presence, never asked for photographs, never treated him differently. In return, he was unfailingly polite, genuinely interested in their lives, and one of their most generous tippers. At the counter, Maria Rodriguez wiped down the already clean surface for the 3rd time in 10 minutes, fighting the fatigue that threatened to overwhelm her. At 32, she carried herself with the quiet determination of someone who had faced more than her share of challenges and emerged stronger for them. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, revealing a face that was striking in its openness, laugh lines around her eyes telling the story of a woman who found joy even in difficult circumstances. The name tag pinned to her crisp uniform read Maria in faded letters, but it didn't tell the full story. It didn't mention that she was working her 2nd shift of the day, that she had a 10-year-old son doing homework at his grandmother's apartment, that she was 3 semesters away from a nursing degree she'd been working toward for 6 years, 1 class at a time. It didn't reveal that she had left an abusive relationship 3 years ago with nothing but her son and the clothes on their backs, that she had rebuilt their lives from scratch, or that despite everything, she still believed in the fundamental goodness of people. The bell above the door jingled, pulling Maria from her thoughts. She looked up, summoning a fresh smile as the door swung open, to reveal a group of teenagers, their designer clothes and perfectly styled hair immediately marking them as out of place in the humble diner. Leading the pack was Brianna Westfield, her confident stride and imperious gaze suggesting she viewed the world as a stage built exclusively for her performance. Brianna was the embodiment of privileged youth. The only daughter of a prominent studio executive and a former model, she had grown up in a Bel Air mansion where her every whim was indulged, her every demand met, her every mistake excused. Her Instagram account boasted 300,000 followers who eagerly consumed the carefully curated glimpses of her charmed life, the luxury vacations, the celebrity encounters, the exclusive parties. What her followers didn't see were the people she stepped on along the way, the service workers she demeaned, the classmates she belittled. Behind Brianna trailed three friends who seemed more like accessories than individuals, each stylish and beautiful in the same carefully manufactured way, each competing for Brianna's approval while simultaneously fearing her judgment. They moved as a unit, laughing too loudly at Brianna's comments, adopting her opinions as their own, reflecting her attitudes like mirrors designed to make her appear even more magnificent. The contrast between these newcomers and the diner's regular patrons couldn't have been more stark. At the counter, an elderly man in a bus driver's uniform hunched over a late dinner before his night shift. 2 booths away, a nursing student surrounded by textbooks absently stirred her cooling coffee. Near the window, a middle-aged couple shared a slice of pie in comfortable silence, their wedding rings catching the light as their hands occasionally met across the table. And in the corner, partially obscured by shadows, Keanu Reeves observed it all with quiet interest, his book temporarily forgotten as this new drama began to unfold. There was something in his expression, not judgment, but a watchful compassion, the look of someone who had seen enough of the world to understand the complex forces that shape people, for better or worse. Outside, the rain intensified, drumming against the windows with increasing urgency, as if warning of the storm that was about to break inside. The neon open sign flickered once, twice, casting momentary shadows across the faces of everyone in the diner, a fleeting reminder of the fragility of the moment, of how quickly light can give way to darkness, and sometimes back to light again. The air in the diner seemed to shift as Brianna and her entourage claimed the largest booth, their designer bags occupying seats that could have held other customers, their voices rising above the soft background music as if determined to reshape the atmosphere according to their preferences. Maria straightened her shoulders, took a deep breath, and moved toward their table with menus in hand, her professional smile firmly in place. What she couldn't know was that this ordinary interaction, one of countless similar moments in her years of service work, was about to become extraordinary. That the man in the corner booth was about to witness an exchange that would move him to action, that the entitled teenager was about to learn a lesson no private school education could provide. The scene was set, the players in position. In the warm light of Mel's downtown diner, with the rain providing a rhythmic soundtrack against the windows, the stage was perfectly prepared for a moment that would remind everyone present, and eventually millions online, that kindness is never wasted, that dignity cannot be bought, and that sometimes heroes wear not capes, but worn leather jackets and world-weary smiles. As Maria approached the table of teenagers, menu in hand and professionalism intact despite her exhaustion, she caught the eye of the man in the corner booth. Something passed between them, not quite a smile, but a moment of recognition, the silent solidarity of those who understand what it means to move through the world with genuine humility. Neither could have predicted how significant that fleeting connection would become in the minutes that followed, how it would serve as the first thread in a tapestry of events that would soon bind their stories together in unexpected ways. Maria approached the table of teenagers with practiced efficiency, her smile professional despite the weariness that clung to her bones after 10 hours on her feet. She distributed the laminated menus with a quiet "Welcome to Mel's" that was nearly drowned out by Brianna's laughter at something on her phone. "Can I start you all with some drinks while you look over the menu?" Maria asked, pen poised over her notepad. The question hung in the air, unanswered, as the teenagers continued their conversation as if she were invisible. This wasn't uncommon in Maria's experience, the particular blindness some people had toward those they considered beneath their notice. She had learned long ago not to take it personally. After a moment, she cleared her throat gently. "Whenever you're ready," she added, maintaining her composure. It was this small sound that finally drew Brianna's attention from her phone. The teenager looked up, her gaze sliding over Maria with the casual dismissiveness of someone evaluating and dismissing furniture. "Oh my God, are you actually, still using a pen and paper to take orders?" Brianna's voice carried across the diner, deliberately pitched to ensure everyone heard her. "That's so retro. Don't you guys have tablets or something from this century?" Her friends tittered on cue, their laughter a chorus of reinforcement. The sound bounced off the worn linoleum and faded chrome, alien in the warm atmosphere of the diner. At the counter, the elderly bus driver frowned into his coffee. The nursing student glanced up from her textbooks, her expression a mixture of annoyance and sympathy. In the corner booth, Keanu lowered his book slightly, his dark eyes watching the scene unfold with quiet intensity. "We find this system works well for us," Maria replied evenly, her smile unwavering. "Now, what can I get you to drink?" Brianna exchanged a look with her friends, the kind of glance that telegraphed her intention to find amusement at someone else's expense. "Well, I'd love a skinny vanilla latte with almond milk and an extra shot, but I'm guessing that's not happening in this." She paused, looking around with exaggerated dismay. "Establishment. We have regular or decaf coffee, several types of tea, and the usual selection of sodas and milkshakes," Maria responded, refusing to be baited. Her voice remained pleasant, though a small muscle had begun to tense in her jaw. "Wow, so gourmet," Brianna drawled, earning another round of Snickers. "Fine. Diet Coke, and make sure there's actually ice in it this time." This last comment, delivered with a smirk, implied a previous failing that had never occurred. Maria nodded and turned to the next teenager, who blinked as if surprised to be acknowledged as an individual separate from Brianna. Just water," the girl mumbled, suddenly less confident. "Water for me, too," the third teen echoed. The fourth, a boy with carefully disheveled hair, glanced at Brianna before saying, "Got any craft beers?" "I'll need to see ID for alcohol," Maria responded automatically. The boy rolled his eyes. "Whatever. Just bring me a Coke then." Maria nodded and turned to go, but Brianna's voice stopped her. "Actually, wait. What's good here? Is anything actually edible?" She flipped the menu shut with a dramatic sigh. "I mean, I'm literally starving, but I'm also on this cleanse that my nutritionist designed for me." Before Maria could respond, Brianna continued. "Do you guys do, avocado toast or acai bowls? Or is it all just—" She waved her hand dismissively at the menu. "Grease and carbs." "Our menu is listed there," Maria replied, gesturing to the laminated page. "The chef can make some modifications, but we don't serve items that aren't on the menu." "Of course you don't," Brianna muttered, just loud enough to be heard. Then louder. "Fine. I guess I'll have a side salad. Dressing on the side. Actually, no dressing. Just bring some lemon wedges." She looked around at her friends. "Carbs are literally poison, you guys." As Maria noted the order, Brianna suddenly gasped, staring at her phone. "Oh, my God. You guys, Justin just texted. He's having people over later." She looked up at Maria as if suddenly remembering her presence. "Actually, can you hurry with those drinks? We might not be staying that long after all." "I'll get those right out," Maria assured her, turning toward the kitchen. As she did, her foot caught on the recently mopped floor, still slightly damp from the evening cleaning. She stumbled, catching herself on a nearby chair but dropping her order pad in the process. As she bent to retrieve it, Brianna's voice cut through the diner like a knife. "Oh my God, are you drunk? I should totally report you to the manager." She turned to her friends with exaggerated concern. This is why people like her are stuck in jobs like this. No basic coordination. The diner fell silent. The nursing student's hand froze midway through turning a page. The couple sharing pie stopped mid-conversation. Even the rain seemed to pause momentarily against the windows, as if holding its breath. Maria straightened slowly, order pad in hand, her face carefully composed, despite the flush of humiliation creeping up her neck. In her years of service work, she had encountered plenty of difficult customers, but there was something particularly cutting about being mocked by someone young enough to be her daughter, someone who had likely never worked a day in her life. "I'll get your drinks," she said simply, refusing to engage with the provocation. Her voice was steady, her expression neutral, but those who looked closely might have noticed the slight tremble in her hands, the way she blinked a little too rapidly. As Maria disappeared into the kitchen, Brianna turned back to her friends, already dismissing the incident. Anyway, as I was saying about Justin's party, but the atmosphere in the diner had shifted. The elderly bus driver was openly glaring at the teenager's table. The nursing student had closed her textbook, her expression thunderous. And in the corner booth, Keanu Reeves had set down his book entirely, his full attention now focused on the scene playing out before him. What happened next unfolded with the inevitability of a wave approaching shore. Maria returned with a tray of drinks, her professionalism intact despite the burning embarrassment still evident in her eyes. As she carefully distributed the glasses, Brianna continued her performance for her captive audience of friends. "So then I told him, if you can't afford Coachella VIP passes, then maybe we shouldn't be seen together," she was saying as Maria placed the Diet Coke in front of her. Then, without looking up, Brianna added, "This better have enough ice this time." Maria nodded silently and turned to serve the others, but as she set down the last glass, Brianna made a small sound of disgust. "Excuse me," she said, her voice dripping with exaggerated patience. "But I specifically asked for a Diet Coke with ice. This is barely cold." Maria glanced at the glass, which contained a perfectly reasonable amount of ice. "I'm sorry about that. Would you like me to bring you more ice?" "No, I'd like you to do your job right the first time," Brianna snapped, her veneer of politeness evaporating entirely. "Is that really so hard? God, no wonder you're stuck working in a place like this." The words hung in the air, sharp and poisonous. Maria stood very still, her face a careful mask of professional composure. But behind that mask, something was happening. Not anger, not even hurt, but a quiet dignity that refused to be diminished by cruelty. "I'll get you fresh ice," she said simply, reaching for the glass. As she did, the sleeve of her uniform pulled back slightly, revealing a small tattoo on her inner wrist. A semicolon, the symbol adopted by those who had faced depression and suicidal thoughts, but chosen to continue their story. It was a tiny mark, barely noticeable, but it spoke volumes about the strength required to stand there and absorb this teenager's casual cruelty. In the corner booth, Keanu Reeves's eyes narrowed slightly, his attention fully captured by the unfolding drama and the quiet dignity of the waitress at its center. He set his book down, slipped a bookmark between the pages, and began to rise from his seat. As Maria turned to get more ice, Brianna's voice followed her like a whip. "And while you're at it, maybe check if the chef knows how to make anything that isn't drowning in grease. Some of us actually care about our bodies." Her friends laughed on cue, the sound hollow and performative. One of them, the quieter girl who had ordered water, glanced uncomfortably around the diner, seemingly aware that they had crossed a line. But she said nothing, trapped in the gravitational pull of Brianna's influence. "Do you think she even went to college?" Brianna stage whispered, not bothering to lower her voice enough to prevent Maria from hearing as she walked away. "This is why my dad always says education is important. Otherwise, you end up like that at 40? Maria was 32, though the years of working double shifts had etched fine lines around her eyes that made her look older under the harsh diner lighting. She disappeared into the kitchen, the swinging door offering momentary refuge from the teenager's barbed comments. In the brief moment of privacy, Maria allowed herself one deep, steadying breath. She thought of her son, Elijah, probably finishing his homework at his grandmother's apartment now. She thought of the nursing textbooks waiting for her at home, of the midnight study sessions that would follow this shift. She thought of how far she had come from the darkest moments of her life, and she drew strength from that journey. Just one more hour, she told herself. Just one more hour, and then she could go home, kiss her sleeping son's forehead, and remember what really mattered. Meanwhile, in the main dining area, something was happening. Keanu Reeves had risen from his corner booth, coffee cup in hand, and was making his way toward the counter. His movements were unhurried yet purposeful, his expression thoughtful rather than angry. He placed his empty mug on the counter near the coffee machine, a courtesy to save Maria an extra trip. As he did, the elderly bus driver caught his eye and nodded slightly toward Brianna's table with a look of disgust. Keanu returned the nod, a silent acknowledgement passing between them, the recognition of witnessing something wrong and the mutual understanding that it shouldn't stand unchallenged. When Maria emerged from the kitchen with a fresh glass of Diet Coke, practically overflowing with ice, she found Keanu standing casually by the counter. Their eyes met briefly, and he offered a small smile of encouragement. Not pity, but solidarity. Maria returned the smile with a grateful nod before approaching Brianna's table again. "Here's your Diet Coke with extra ice," Maria said, placing the glass carefully on the table. "Are you ready to order food, or would you like a few more minutes?" Brianna barely glanced at the drink. "Finally, and yes, I already told you what I wanted. A side salad with no dressing, just lemon wedges." She turned to her friends. "You guys should order something too, I guess, even though we're probably leaving soon for Justin's." As the friends placed their orders, a plate of fries to share, nothing more, Brianna's attention was caught by something over Maria's shoulder. Her eyes widened slightly, her posture straightening as she noticed Keanu for the first time. She smoothed her hair with one hand, her demeanor shifting instantly. "Oh my God," she hissed to her friends. "That's literally Keanu Reeves." The group's collective attention swiveled toward the actor, their expressions transforming from boredom to eager excitement. One of them already had her phone out, angling for a discreet photo. Brianna's entire demeanor changed, her voice lowering to a stage whisper that was still perfectly audible throughout the quiet diner. "Act natural, you guys, but also, amazing. He's coming this way." Indeed, Keanu had begun walking toward their table, though not for the reason Brianna imagined. He approached with the same unassuming manner he brought to everything, stopping near Maria with a respectful distance that indicated he was there to speak with her, not intrude. "Excuse me," he said to Maria, his voice gentle but carrying in the now silent diner. "I just wanted to say thank you for the excellent service tonight. The coffee was perfect." Maria smiled, genuine warmth breaking through her professional mask for the first time since Brianna's arrival. "You're very welcome, sir. Can I get you anything else?" "Actually," Keanu said, reaching into his pocket and extracting his wallet, "I'd like to pay my bill now." He handed her a credit card, then added, "And I'd like to cover their table as well." He nodded toward Brianna and her friends, whose jaws had collectively dropped at this direct acknowledgement. Before Maria could respond, he continued, his voice still calm, but with an undercurrent of steel that hadn't been there before. "On one condition." The entire diner seemed to hold its breath. "I believe they owe you an apology," he said simply. Brianna's face cycled through a series of expressions: shock, embarrassment, calculation, and finally, a forced contriteness that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Oh my God, we were just joking around," she said, attempting a light laugh that fell flat in the weighted silence. "No offense meant." Keanu's expression remained gentle but unmoved. "I've been sitting over there for the past hour," he said, gesturing toward his corner booth, "and I've watched this woman work non-stop, taking care of every customer with kindness and patience, including those who haven't shown her the same respect." He turned back to Brianna, his eyes holding hers steadily. "The way we treat people matters, especially those we think can't do anything for us." Brianna flushed deeply, caught between the mortification of being called out by a celebrity and the desperate desire to salvage the situation. "I'm really sorry," she mumbled, addressing Maria directly for the first time. "I didn't mean anything by it." "Yeah, sorry," her friends echoed, looking everywhere but at Maria or Keanu. Maria, for her part, accepted the apology with a gracious nod, her professionalism never faltering. "It's all right," she said simply. "I'll put in your order right away." As she turned to go, Keanu spoke again. "Actually, I was wondering if I could join you for a moment," he said to Maria, "if you can spare the time. I have a question about the community college program here." Maria looked surprised but nodded, I have a short break coming up in about 10 minutes if that works. Perfect, Keanu said with a warm smile. Then turning to the teenagers whose eyes were still wide with disbelief, he added, "Enjoy your evening." The subtext was clear. The audience was over. He walked back to his booth, leaving Brianna and her friends in a stunned silence, punctuated only by the soft music playing through the diner's speakers. When Maria returned 10 minutes later, having handed off her orders to the kitchen, she found Keanu waiting at his booth with 2 fresh cups of coffee. She slid into the seat across from him, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten in the surreality of the moment. "I don't really have a question about community college," Keanu admitted with a small smile. "I just thought you might appreciate a break from that table." Maria laughed, a genuine, unguarded sound that transformed her tired features. "Thank you," she said simply. "For that, and for—" She gestured vaguely toward Brianna's table, where the teenagers were now hunched over their phones, no doubt frantically posting about their encounter. "No need for thanks," Keanu replied. "I meant what I said. The way we treat people matters." He paused, then added more quietly, "I saw your tattoo earlier." The semicolon. Maria's hand moved unconsciously to her wrist, her fingers brushing over the small mark. "It's a reminder," she said, "that my story isn't over yet." Keanu nodded thoughtfully. "None of our stories are," he said. "And sometimes we don't realize how our chapters intersect with others, or how a small kindness or cruelty can change someone else's narrative." They talked for a few more minutes, about her nursing studies, about his latest charitable foundation, about the simple philosophy that guided his interactions: be excellent to each other. When Maria's break ended, she returned to work with renewed energy, serving even Brianna's table with the same professional courtesy she showed everyone. But something had shifted in the diner's atmosphere. Brianna and her friends were subdued, their earlier arrogance deflated by the encounter. They left shortly after finishing their food, leaving a substantial tip that felt like penance. Keanu remained until closing, reading quietly in his corner booth. When Maria brought him the check, refusing his earlier attempt to pay for Brianna's table, he left a tip that would cover a significant portion of her next semester's textbooks, along with a note: "Your story matters. Keep writing it. KR double quote." As the rain finally stopped outside and the diner prepared to close, Maria found herself standing at the window, watching the now clear night sky where stars were beginning to appear. The evening's events already felt dreamlike, but the note in her pocket and the warmth in her heart were undeniably real. In a world that often rewarded the loud and the entitled, tonight had been a reminder that sometimes quiet dignity wins, that sometimes the universe sends unexpected allies, and that sometimes the most profound lessons come not from those appointed to teach us, but from those who lead by quiet example. As Keanu had said, the way we treat people matters. It was a simple truth, but one powerful enough to change stories, to rewrite narratives, and sometimes to remind us that our story isn't over yet, that even on the hardest days, in the most unexpected moments, grace can find us. And sometimes that grace looks like Keanu Reeves, sitting in a corner booth of a downtown diner, reminding the world what it means to be truly excellent to each other.